Hi, Black Women Be Well family. Welcome to another episode. My name is Jennifer Tomlinson, host, and I'm so grateful for you all to be here with me today for another special episode. Today, we have with us the incomparable Danielle Joseph. She is many wonderful things: minister, mentor, coach, author, businesswoman. I mean, she's just everything and all things. Her Instagram summarizes that she helps women create strategies to overcome their current season. And she is joining us today, and I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to the show, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. I really appreciate it.
Now, listen, I've been trying to have you on the show for a long time.
Yes, I think a year.
A year. And my heart was set like, we're going to come back to the studio. The studio is going to open up. COVID is going to, end. And I really wanted to be with you in person at the studio on campus. And it just didn't happen. I was like, I'm not going to wait anymore. I need you on the show.
Yes. I'm so happy to be here.
And for those that don't know, I know Danielle a long time. We actually went to the same college.
Mm-hmm.
But she is really well known in the Central Florida community with all of her coaching, her public speaking. But she has her own podcast, and it is called the Infertility Podcast.
Yes.
And what's really cool about it is she has the word in these brackets. So infertility, which is just dope.
Yes.
I'm a super fan. I'm glad that you're here with us to talk to us about your show. So let's start with that. Can you tell our audience about your show and everything about it?
Right. So again, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your platform. And as you stated, we go way back, and you graced my podcast when we were just kind of starting out. So definitely appreciate the support and the love. So the podcast started in 2019. And it was in the midst of a really, really tough season for me. Just to go back a couple of years, 2017, my father got sick. He had open heart surgery in 2017. And in 2018, I lost grandparents on both sides of my family. So dealing with grief, dealing with loss, dealing with trauma, and trying to conceive. So my husband and I, now we've been married for 5 years, but at that point we were married about 2 to 3 years. And so we were trying to conceive for about a year with nothing happening. And so, the women in my family, mentors are like, okay, just go, speak to the OBGYN, let them know, hey, you've been trying for a year, nothing is happening. And so I did that, and they were like, okay, let's try 6 more months and we'll go from there. And we did that. And they started me on Clomid, which is a pill that will help you ovulate, because in their minds, they felt that I was not ovulating. So I remember the first month I was, prescribed Clomid, and the nurse was, she was being super sweet. And she's like, you never know, the first time you take it, you might get pregnant. And in my head, I'm like, she's just being nice, trying to make me feel comfortable. Cool. So I ended up getting pregnant. But I really had a new perspective in the sense that I'm walking in, like you said, in brackets. So in fertility, I may have some challenges trying to conceive, but that doesn't mean that I won't conceive. Right. So the podcast launched June of 2019, and July of 2019, I had another miscarriage. So I had already kind of put the trains on the track to do this podcast. There was a lot of momentum, behind it. And here I am in the midst of another miscarriage, and I'm launching this podcast. But let me tell you, it's been so therapeutic to talk about it, because it's such a taboo subject. So to be able to talk about it, and to also have people come on and talk about their story and their season of infertility and overcoming it. So we have recorded 3 seasons thus far. We're recording the 4th season now. 15 1,000 downloads plus at this point.
Wow.
100
Get it,
episodes.
girl.
Yeah. So it's just grown into something that I
Yeah.
never imagined. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
who's gonna listen to this? My aunt, my mom, they barely listen, but I appreciate it. But it's just turned into something that I did not anticipate it to turn into. I have people DMing me, emailing me about the impact, and I'm like, wow, had I kind of like muzzled my mouth, had I just said, okay, yeah, just kidding, I'm not launching this anymore, type of thing, what would happen? So it's been a great journey. I have people who often say, it's one thing to overcome something and talk about it, and it's another thing to be in it and talk about it, right? So I've found strength in pushing through and plowing through and being committed and consistent to it. And I'm looking forward to what season 4 will bring. I think I had to change strategies to get people to come on and speak. Before it was kind of like people that I knew, people who recommended other people, but now I've it's really pushed me to network and speak to individuals who would be open to sharing their story.
What I really love about what you said too is it was so huge for you to take that word and reframe it. And it really speaks to, because I've sat in on some of your public speaking engagements, and your big thing is seasons.
Yes.
So I'm curious, like, how would you describe 2019 for you? You reclaim that word, but what season? And maybe even because my listeners might be new to your platform, can you explain your season thing real quick? Because it's really a dope concept. And then tell us what season you think you were in 2019.
So in 2019, it was a and I tell people this all the time, that you can find yourself in different different aspects of your life. You can be in different seasons, right? I may be flourishing in my work, I may be flourishing in my career, but I'm still going through this trying to overcome infertility, right? And so we find ourselves being successful in one area and unable to navigate another area. And so 2019 was a lot of that. It was I was definitely in the waiting season in all aspects of my life. At that time, I was in the waiting season for my career. I was in the waiting season trying to conceive. There was so many things that I was waiting on, right? But the beauty of waiting, and in my platform, it's called Watch and Wait. It's not that you're waiting and you're just idly waiting and not doing any work or doing anything to move forward, right? You're doing the strategies necessary to push forward. And so in 2019, I was not only dealing with this challenge of multiple miscarriages, going to doctor visits, and all this, but in work, I was in a really, to be totally honest, like a very toxic work environment. And to the point where my resignation letter was written and saved on my desktop, because any given day I was ready to walk out.
I understand that 100%. Been there, know exactly what you're talking about.
So, I mean, it was just too much. It was too much. And I told God, I was like, something's got to give, because I can't be struggling in all areas right now. Like it's just too much. And so I was going through, my husband and I, it's like we were running parallel lines, because he was also in a very volatile, crazy work environment as well. And so we were trying to navigate through that. And I do believe, a lot of the stress may have caused some of the challenges we were having health-wise. Okay. And so in 2019, I was definitely in the waiting season. And so my program or my platform really speaks about 4 seasons, just as we see it in the natural. Okay. So for spring, it's planting and preparation. So spring is a time where you plant seeds in hopes of getting a harvest. So in my job, I was planting and preparing because I wanted to, although I was still waiting for a promotion, I was doing what I needed to do to get that promotion, right? So I was sharpening my skills. I was applying for jobs. I was touching up my resume. I was speaking to individuals, networking. And so that's one of the seasons within my platform. Talks a little bit about Watch and Wait. Watch and Wait is kind of like the summer, because especially if you live in Florida, our summers are hot, right? And so you're watching and waiting and hoping that the seeds that you planted are, they're good, So, it's a season that you feel like even sometimes you're in a drought, right? When you're in the waiting season, I just put out a reel about this, is like, you feel like everyone around you is getting what they prayed for, what they wanted, what they're dreamed for. And you're the one that's just kind of like, I'm waiting for it. So that's watch and wait. Enhancement and elevation is a good one and a funny one, because I get questions on this all the time. Like, why do you have this one? So enhance and elevation is autumn. So autumn is when you see, the fruits of your labor. But I'm really big about, yes, celebrate yourself, celebrate your victories, but you got to still prune. You still got to, move forward. And so even though you have a harvest, even though you reached and attained your goals, what are you doing next to still sharpen your tool and move forward? So that's enhancement and elevation. And then finally, committed and consistent, which is winter. And we know that most of the holidays fall in winter. And we know how we get on the last quarter of every year. We get real complacent with our goals, we get real complacent with our eating habits, because it's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, it's Kwanzaa, it's all the holidays, and you just get complacent. You're like, yeah, January, I'm back at it, right? But in that season, you have to stay committed and consistent in order to reap, a greater harvest. And so that is committed and consistent.
I love your season curriculum because it just fits everything. And I know, like, even sitting through it, everybody can kind of analyze, where they are in each area based on different aspects in their life. And so, like, for you in 2019, waiting, I just resonate with that so much, because I'm waiting too. Like, I'm waiting for this. Where is the significant other?
Right.
And what am I doing to still self-improve and still do my self-work and all that? But I'm like, bro, like, where you at? But
well, my story. I was single for 7 years. So I tell people all the time, I have a PhD in waiting. I feel like this time I might have a double PhD because I'm in the waiting to conceive. But I was single for 7 years until my husband and I reunited. And so I definitely understand the waiting season.
Yeah. And I think that this is why I love your platform, and why I just want to make sure, like, our listeners know that your show, it's titled Infertility, but you talk about everything.
Yeah, I do.
It's for anybody. Yeah, you do. So who do you think, like, your audience is really gauged for? And what are, like, this kind of, can you give an overview of some of the things you do talk about to my listeners so that they can feel motivated to jump on your platform?
Yeah. So, I think the title, it grabs attention, right? And we do talk about infertility, and I make sure that even when I know I am blessed and I will be a mother, this is still a topic that I want to discuss. So we've talked about ways of still incorporating different things that I feel are important, so on the podcast, we talk about infertility. We allow women to come on and talk about their infertility story, their journey, whether they've come and have children now, or they're still in the midst of the season. If they feel comfortable speaking about it, they are welcome to join. We talk about grief, because grief comes in different forms. And I think 2020 really taught people that grief is not only dealing with the loss of life, and we dealt a lot of that in 2020, but grief is also things that we wanted to do that we didn't get the opportunity to do, right? And so dealing and unpacking grief, I think, is very important. So we've had quite a bit of people come on and talk about grief, and in season 4 I do have someone lined up that's going to talk about it as well. We talk about mental health, we talk about self-care. I intervene and talk about my own personal story to help people learn maybe from my mistakes or my journey, and so I just love the overall transparency and openness of people who come on. And we talk about different things. In October, we focus on infant and infant and child loss. And so women come and talk about their story, and some, have not had children, you know, and others have gone on, but they're still dealing with the grief. And so we talk about that, we unpack that. And I think for me, one of the biggest things is I'm a bit of a rebel. I'm a pastor's kid, but I'm a bit of a rebel in the sense that I like to push the envelope. And if you tell me that we shouldn't be talking about it, I want to talk about it.
Okay.
So that's what I do. I'm like, oh, okay. You said we can't talk about it? Oh, bet we're gonna talk about it.
Danielle's a little bit of a radical.
Yes.
Go USF. So
yes.
You know, that's how we roll.
Yes. So I like to push the envelope a little bit.
Yeah.
So, I you know, that was one of the main things is like, when I started the podcast, people were like, well, do you want to talk about this? Like, this is, you know, this is a taboo subject, it may not be well received and that sort of thing. And I had to really sit down and say, okay, do I really want to do this? Because it's going to require me a new level of transparency.
Yeah.
Encourage.
Yes. Encourage. And I what I appreciate is that we need to talk about it.
Yes.
You know, and that's a part of the process. A lot of us feel so isolated and alone, and we don't realize that our sisters are experiencing what we are experiencing, and they might have some experience that they could help me. Like, so it is important for some of these topics to be discussed, you know? So I appreciate you for having the courage.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you're like I said, your show is for anyone. You had me on there. I ain't got no kids. I ain't trying to have no kids.
We talked about, in our episode, we talked about singleness. We talked about PCOS. We talked a little bit about everything, you know? And that's what I love. It's just, for me, like I always tell people when they come on, and especially those who are nervous, I'm like, it's just a conversation that you're having with me, and it's just recorded. And there may be thousands of people who may listen to it. But let's not talk about that piece.
You know, and what I really love about your show too is I get a lot out of it. I really thought I was going to be a mother too.
Yeah.
That was always in my head. Like I'm a natural nurturer, natural educator. So
you're born in March, so
you know,
you guys are nurtured.
We're a little lovey-dovey. So like in my head, like I'm going to have 5 kids. I want a big family. And then, you know, I'm waiting, you know, nothing's happened in terms of like a relationship. I just turned 35 and now the clock is ticking. And this is within the last 2 years was the first time I ever even thought about like, do I actually want kids? And listening to your show, honestly, it's just a great opportunity for me to kind of reflect and think through that. Because I think the worst thing is for a single people, you know, you get a kid, then you realize after you have the kid, you don't want a kid. That's not, you know, so a lot of ways I've, you know, through your help and just great people in my life, I've been really thanking God. Like, thank you for giving me this length of time to actually think about it versus having maybe had a kid earlier on and then being like, oh, you know, if this is for me, you know? So I really appreciate people like you creating these types of platforms. And like I said, people might see your show and say, oh, this is for people who are interested in having kids. No, this is for anyone in any part, any stage of your life, because you really allow us to have space to even think about the process and all that stuff. So I really appreciate that. So I got on your show, we talked about PCOS. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because that's how my show started. It was supposed to be a 3-episode experiment on PCOS, and then it became a thing. But I
understand. Like, wait, people are actually listening to this?
People want more stuff. But I didn't know you had it until you invited me to your show.
So yeah, I never got diagnosed with it. Still to this day, I'm still running different tests and different things, but I just know my body, right? And so I can only speak to the fact that I know when things are off, right? And if you look at the list of symptoms, right? And you have to understand that PCOS is a syndrome, right? So once you look at it from that aspect, you can look at some of those symptoms and say, well, I have that, you know what I mean? Or over the course of the past 2 to 3 years, these symptoms have really amped up, you know? I used to have really, really bad menstrual cycles. And it wasn't until my adulthood that I realized that's really not normal, right? But we just grow up in our culture like, it is what it is.
Right.
drink some tea and lay down. Like that's what they tell us. You know what I mean? So you don't even know that, hey, there's something going on, and so, through my time of trying to conceive, I feel like it's just really just amped up. And maybe it's just my knowing my body, I could tell like there was times where my hormones were completely imbalanced.
Yep.
Not being able to lose weight, and I know as we get older, it becomes more difficult, right? But to just be eating salads and
no, it's a whole different ball game with this syndrome. You're totally right. It's the weight, it doesn't happen. You do not lose weight at all.
How am I eating salads only, smoothies only, and I'm gaining weight? Like there's something wrong. You can't tell me that there's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
There's something wrong, So that was like the huge indication. And not to say that I was skinny, by no stretch was I ever a skinny person, but I had a healthy weight, and it wasn't until really after I got married that a lot of these symptoms, and I believe, stress had a lot to do with it too, with making the syndrome and the symptoms worse.
Yeah.
I was having acne, and I'm like, bro, I'm like 34, 33 years old. What do I, why do I have acne? Thank God I don't know if it's COVID or my new job, less stressful, whatever. Acne has not been a problem since I've been 35. So thank God for that. But it's like, when you look at all those symptoms, you could see that something is off. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I really honestly, because the doctors kept saying, oh, your tests are fine, nothing's coming back, I had to take matters into my own hand, because I said, I know what I'm feeling, and so I just made some conscious decisions, like cutting down my sugars, because I love sweets, cutting down, how much dairy I have, and switching, completely off, milk and just doing almond milk. And, I think the biggest thing I can't give up is cheese.
Oh, girl, I love cheese.
Yeah,
so, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I haven't found an alternative for that. So that's that. So, in the past year, looking at doing more low carb, I tried keto, but it just isn't working. I don't know. I think I need to get a chef or something to help me.
Keto wasn't for me either. I just can't eat that much meat and fat.
Yeah, it's the fat piece and the meat. You're right. It's just too much.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And so I in August of last year, I started also taking a supplement that I'm going to start talking about it on my platform, which is Ovastal. I think that's the way you say it. And it's just a supplement that helps with menstrual, health, ovarian, your eggs, and hormone imbalance and insulin resistance. And I feel like I had a lot of insulin resistance. Yeah. And of course that affects your hormones, that affects, trying to conceive and all those things. So I've really, in the past year or so, have done my own work to try to help with it. Even though I have not been diagnosed with PCOS, I have a lot of those symptoms. And so just doing my best to do better, right?
And that's what we talked about on your show a lot, like taking matters in your own hand and getting and creating the medical treatment that is right for you. The thing is hard to diagnose. It's hard. Some doctors don't get it right. Even on my show, me and my sister just talked about how for years doctors would just say, "Oh, you have a hormone imbalance." It wasn't until I was like, listen, this is the thing. Like, hey, you figure out how to, test for this or whatever. And every doctor's approach is different in testing for it and deciding on it. So like you said, your body and you've built the team of medical experts to help you make informed decisions on how you want to diet, on the supplements you're taking.
Yes.
And I think that's just the self-advocacy part is such an important part with PCOS, and specifically too with people doing, their fertility journey. So I love that about where you are in your PCOS journey, that you're like, nah, I'm about to figure this out.
Yes. Because listen, like, you're the one living in your body.
Yeah.
You know what you're experiencing. Like, I understand that my blood work is coming back fine. I understand like all these tests and everything's coming back fine, but I know what I'm feeling. You know what I mean?
Right.
And gotta get into the driver's seat and say, okay, this is the direction we're gonna go.
Yeah. So, our show is dedicated on talking about health and wellness from the Black female experience. But last year, I ended up getting a lot of white female allies who listen,
That's
which
awesome.
I just totally appreciate the love and that they're interested in hearing our perspective. So I have a question for you, and I do want you to answer it through the Black female experience, but also if you just have general information for women in general. For those that are interested in starting, like thinking about having kids, based on your experience, do you have any advice for Black women or women in general on how to start that journey?
Yeah. So, from my lens as a Black woman, I think one of the challenges that we face or obstacles we face is everyone just automatically assumes that we are fertile, that the first time that we, make that decision that we want to conceive, it's going to happen. And I experienced that within my own family because all of the women in my family had honeymoon babies. I am a product I am a honeymoon baby. My sister got married maybe 2-3 years after I did. She had a honeymoon baby. So that is just like what comes with the territory, and I think a lot of doctors, a lot of medical professionals just kind of, I don't want to say automatically assume, but feel like, okay, they don't have these type of issues. These are the type of issues that they have. And so they look at it from that lens. And it makes it difficult for you to navigate how to move forward, right? Because no one really teaches you about these things. Like there's things I'm learning that I'm like, how come they didn't teach this in school? Like, how come, there wasn't a class on this, So you're out here trying to, you're a woman, you're the one that's kind of driving this, your woman's health. And it's like, you don't even have the appropriate information to move forward. Right. So one thing I would say is, that I wish, I knew earlier, or maybe took heed to some advice, because some people did give me this advice early on, is to seek a fertility specialist. Okay. And I think, OBGYNs, they have, great tools, great knowledge. But sometimes you have to go a layer deeper, right? And so my experience with my OBGYN was, it wasn't a bad experience, but what I realized is there's certain exams that you have to take on certain days, certain blood work that you have to take, within your cycle, and they weren't adhering to that. There's certain, and everything was coming back fine, right? So I had to be open to making that investment to see a fertility specialist, right? And thank God, so far everything still has come back fine, but it's knowing and understanding how it all works. And I feel like when you have a fertility specialist, they take the time to explain it. So if one of your listeners is navigating this space, I would say, consider taking that approach to a fertility specialist. The other thing
hold on a second, because you said a lot. And first thing, the assumption that Black women are innately fertile is, let's unpack that for a second, because that was some truth that you said right there. And when you said it, the first thing that came to mind is, that stereotype of women of color, just kind of poor women of color, just being able to just sprout out babies, right?
Correct.
And I just think that's such an interesting archetype to live through as a Black woman, because if you can't, or you struggle, you're going to innately think, I'm not woman enough.
Correct.
right? And so that right there hit me when you said that. Because I think even as a single woman, and we're women of faith, we grew up Christian. I think even for me, being unmarried at 35, not having a family, I mean, that's some baggage I have to unpack.
Yes.
And still being fine in my singleness and still seeing myself as a woman. That's big. The second thing that I thought of when you said that, I just had an interview with Erica Stallings. She came on my show to talk about breast cancer and the mutation gene, and talked about it with Black women. And she mentioned how the breast cancer movement, became like a white female movement, right?
Yes.
And it made me think about infertility.
Yes.
Like that's a whitewashed issue.
I recently started seeing a fertility specialist. And I will tell you, in all of my doctor visits, I have yet to see a Black woman.
Wow.
I am the only Black woman sitting in the waiting room.
Oh my goodness.
COVID has us, social distancing and what have you. In all of my appointments, in all of my procedures, I have been the only Black woman. In that practice, there's only one Black person, and it's a Black male, and I chose him to be my doctor.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why I think it's really important to put that insert that in here, that, don't be afraid. Number one, I think it's a mental thing too. Like, by going to a fertility specialist, maybe you're saying that something is wrong. No, you want to find out the truth. You want to know what it is. Like for me, I went into it saying, I want to know what's going on. If it's me, it's me. If it's my husband, it's my husband. We're going to work through it. It's okay. Right. So I think that there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of isolation. But in all of my appointments with my fertility specialists, the ones I've had to go in office, I have always been the only Black female. And they may not even think I'm Black because of my hair. But I'm Black. Black. Okay.
Black.
Okay.
This is why I'm so glad that women are able to talk, and that, you and I are even occupying this space, because someone is going to listen to this. And I hope that this can unlock something for someone, that it's not something to be ashamed about. Seek the help because it's there, but we're not using it. And it's not a rich white woman thing. You can go to a specialist. And I know that, access to medical care has its own issues, and in terms of accessibility, and if your insurance can cover it. And a lot of us are working, working class poor, and it's difficult, but don't immediately dismiss it. Like, at least start with your primary care doctor. Just start asking questions if that's the only thing you have access to. But it's not a rich white woman thing. Like, we are allowed to be a part of this.
Yes. And the other piece that I was going to say to couple with the fertility specialist is therapy. Last year, hubby and I, we just made the decision, like, we're going to invest in therapy. Because in my mind, it's like the worst thing I can do is have all this grief, have all this baggage. And I know having a child is not going to help me remedy all of the trauma that I went through. Okay. So I have to make the conscious effort to seek help, to move forward, to unpack, to navigate this new space, I think that's another kind of area when we're talking about fertility that we don't really talk about, is the need for therapy and the need of a counselor. Like I said earlier, my father is a pastor. I do believe, pastors can give great advice. They can give, great wisdom, but that doesn't negate the fact that you need a therapist.
Yeah.
Period. And that's coming from who's been in church their whole life. So therapy is necessary. I always say Jesus in therapy, because life is just rough. You know what I mean? And so I think the two things that has really helped in the past year or two with navigating this space is seeking, a fertility specialist and not being ashamed or feel some type of way of doing that. And then second is having a therapist. And we were grateful to find someone who specializes in, fertility. And she was a Black woman as well. So that was great. And so, I mean, and now that I'm thinking about it, I was like, we're building up a team of Black folks. I gotta find a Black doctor to deliver my baby. That's the next thing.
Yeah. I'm so glad you added that. Yeah, because that's big on our platforms. We really emphasize Jesus and therapy, or whatever religious affiliation you're. Just make sure you have the therapy too. And that's something I wouldn't have thought of. Like, the grief is a real part of the journey. That if you don't have the inner resources, definitely that's good to know that therapy should be a part of the equation. I think that's a good tip for our non-Black listeners too, our allies. If you're listening, I'm sure that's something that you might not have considered as well, like seeking out therapy if you're going through this process. And I always remind our non-Black listeners, when you are hearing the experience, we're not, it's not a blame on you or whatever, that it's it's a white woman thing. That's not what we're saying, but this is giving you an opportunity to hear a diverse narrative of what this experience really looks like for non-white women. And I hope that in your spaces, when you can advocate for us, hearing someone like Danielle or whoever, hearing their story gives you perspective. Another thing that came to mind when we were talking is just in general, like, we both have like these health wellness platforms, and in general, those platforms too are very white centered. And I think about, like, if you Google like health and wellness, it's always like, a white woman doing yoga or at the spa. And so I guess my question for you, we can wrap up after this, is what do you feel like we know who your audience is, but what do you feel like your real message is for the listeners of your show? And how important is like just you being here doing it? How important do you think it is to the overall genre of health and wellness?
Okay, so for me, one of the things I will say to anyone who is listening in is the fact that there are always strategies to overcome whatever season you're in. Whether you're dealing with grief, whether you're dealing with a situation at work and you're ready to leave, like I was, whether you're dealing with infertility, whatever it may be, I am big on the fact that in every season there is a strategy that you can utilize to navigate that season, and never think that you're always going to be stuck there. In the larger scheme of things, I think that we all have a voice and we all have a space in this world, right? I am not looking to impact 1 million people, but if I can just help one person, I've done what I'm called to do. And I can say that that's happened in the past 2 year of doing this podcast. I think that in a sense, I've given a face to infertility. I've given a voice to infertility. And for me, that is important because you never know what someone is going through. You never know what challenge someone is facing. And sometimes we're just stuck in our world. We're stuck in our way of doing things that we don't even kind of see what someone else's experience is.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember just a quick story. One of my coworkers, she would be going in and out of the office all the time, and like appointments in the morning, appointments in the afternoons. And this was going on for a long period of time, but I never, thought to ask, but it wasn't until like I kind of opened up and talked about, I'm trying to conceive and nothing is happening. And she explained all that she went through. Those doctors was her going through IVF. It was failed IVF transfers. She explained all that she went through. And I was just in my cubicle doing my work, and I had no idea this is the experience that she was living. And
right there next to you.
Correct. And she had a failed adoption, had a baby shower and everything, and then a failed adoption. And then when she finally was able to adopt, she kept it private until the day that she had the baby. And I understand, because
Yeah.
first experience was traumatic.
Yeah.
So, I feel like giving a face and providing space and openness for people to have those conversations, I think that's what's really, really important. The podcast kind of gives me the leverage to do that. Because as I put out episodes, people provide feedback and I'm able to engage in conversations. And I think that's really what is the utmost importance. And moving forward, I plan to kind of talk about what I've said in this episode here with you, is what has helped me in the past year for my own wellness.
Yeah.
Because regardless, I know one day I will be a mother, whether that comes through me giving birth naturally or adopting. I know that is going to happen, but it's still this topic, women's wellness, fertility, infertility, is still something at my core that I would love to continue to have a conversation.
That's awesome. And when you talked about, helping people find strategies out of any complex time or season and giving a voice, I know that's true about as an important pillar. Those are important pillars too. I know that's true because I hear it when you do speaking engagements. Yes. I hear it in your reels. I hear it when I watch your sermons online. Yes. So I think that's just wonderful that that those are the pillars that are behind your message, and that you want to move this infertility conversation further. And it's already kind of happened, right? So yes. You have this journal, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about this journal. And this is a journal, Infertility Podcast journal, right? Yes. And it just came out. Tell our listeners about it.
So that came out in November of last year. And this one is specifically for those who are on the journey of walking in fertility. And so in the journal, there are prayers, there are declarations, there's spaces for you to write out your thoughts. And it's really, honestly, some of those pages came from my own personal journal, right?
Wow.
Yes. Okay. So some of those verses, some of those conversations that I'm having within it, within the workbook is from my own personal journal. There are other things that I want to put out, but I really felt that it was important to start with this because it connects with what I'm doing right now, right? And having those conversations about infertility. And for me, I wanted to provide a resource that gave listeners or those who just may come across my page something tangible to use during their own meditation devotion time. And so that's really what the book is about. It's about like 100 pages of declarations, prayers, verses that can help you, get through the process. And I've really received some great feedback.
I love it. I love it that you made it. Yes. And that you're author of it. And it's an actual tangible resource that someone can actually use. Can you tell us how we can get a hold of it?
Yes. So on my website, www.iamdaniellejoseph.com, there is a button for like shop. You click that and everything's on there. All of my resources. I think I have some free downloads on there too. And the workbook is on there as well.
Okay, people, download these free resources and order your book today. Okay. And if you love the book and you heard it from the show, send Danielle a nice message and tell her, that you heard about the show through us and all that good stuff. And you have other merchandise on there too, and all your social media stuff. And so if people want to stay connected, how can they stay connected?
So IG is really where I play. People like really posting on Facebook. I'm like, I know, I need to do better. But I'm really on IG. So on Instagram, it's I am Danielle Joseph. On Facebook, it's Danielle Joseph, or you'll use Master Mentor Minister and it'll pop up. I'm not on Twitter anymore. I used to be, but Twitter can sometimes consume your life. And so in general, but I had to get off of Twitter. So those are the two main areas, but IG really provides you the flexibility to do more videos and be more engaged. So I really enjoy being on Instagram.
Awesome. Follow my girl on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe to her podcast. If you use Apple, make sure you rate it and leave a comment. She is also available for public speaking gigs. So if you need her, book her. You know what I'm saying? Maybe if you reference the show, she'll give you like a little 2% discount or something. Drop my name or something. No, but yeah, Danielle, thank you so much. And I'm just so glad we know each other. We both did podcasts the same year. And I don't know like why things happen the way they happen, but the fact that we both had wellness shows coming at the same time, I'm just like, yes, like let's keep amplifying Black voices, you know. And I'm just so glad to know you and to be a thought partner with you. And so thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. And with that being said, we're out of here. Y'all better like this episode, okay? And we got new merch at the website. Go to blackwomanbewell.com and buy a t-shirt. And with that, listen, learn, and be well.
Yes.
Hi, podcast fam. Thanks for watching this latest episode of Black Woman Be Well. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more podcast episodes and for exclusive video content. Also, if you really thought this conversation was beneficial, please share it. I know our show is called Black Women Be Well, but it's not just for Black women, it's just our stories and perspective. So if you know anyone that's interested in being an advocate or ally for Black women who want to learn and want to grow, tell them about this episode and tell them about the show. And like always, be well.